All right. Thanks for bearing with me.
No problem. Thank you for making time today, Christine.
Yeah,
So,
now I can share
yeah,
my screen. Can you guys see my screen now?
yes, the screen
Great.
share's coming through. So, whenever you're ready, take it away. Thank you very much.
Great. So, my name is Christina Williams. I am an assistant astronomer at Noir Lab in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm a member of the community science team. So, I'm gonna do a sort of a Rubin science seminar that focuses on galaxies, galaxy science with Rubin, and specifically focused on Data Preview 1, which you may have heard recently has been released. Actually, it's been about 3 weeks now. And Data Preview 1 is real data on sky with the Rubin observatory, so that's very exciting. So I'm going to show today, here I have an agenda. I'm going to first sort of talk a little bit about the Rubin Science Platform, which is the way that you access this data, and talk a little bit about um, how you access it, why it exists, and things like that. And then I'll talk about an overview of galaxy science with LSST, which I'm sure everyone is somewhat familiar with because people are excited to do galaxy science with LSST. But I think it's nice to sort of see what the sort of new parameter space is that Rubin will open in that field. And I'll talk a little bit about the data products from the Rubin database that are relevant for galaxy science. And then I'll have a demo of how to access the data and how to do some science applications with this data using the Rubin Science Platform in the notebook aspect. And so I can't see the chat, so I would just suggest if you have a question, raise your hand and I can answer it in the middle, and that will be easier for me to see if there's a question. I can address it right away. So since there's
Sorry.
not that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Christine, I just wondered, can you go to a full screen or presenter mode? At the moment, it's all just within your browser.
Can you
Yeah,
see it if I do
yep,
this? Okay,
yep.
great, great, okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I don't know how many people are new to Rubin, but if you are, welcome. This is a good place to start. So the first thing you can do is get a Rubin Science Platform account. And so some of you may already have a Rubin Science Platform account, but if you don't, then we have some instructions on these links that can help you get started. So you have to get approval to access the Rubin Science Platform, but if you have data rights, then it just takes a little bit of time for the process to work. But if you already have a Rubin Science Platform account, then I'll send you in the next slide a link to some of the tools and the sort of example notebook that I'm going to run through in this demonstration. So simulated data has been available in the Rubin Science Platform for a long time. So some of you may be familiar with that. It was called Data Preview 0. So we still have Data Preview 0 is still there. You can still work with that. There was Data Preview 0.2, which is the latest galactic and extragalactic simulation. And then there's DP 0.3 for solar system uh, science products. But new as of June 30th, we now have Data Preview 1, which is real data it's real photons from the sky, but it's using the LSST commissioning camera. So it's not the big LSST cam, but it's a camera with a single detector is the same type of detector as the full camera. So the field of view is a little bit smaller, but you kind of get a feel for what the data products look like and the data quality and things like that. And so this link will give you more information. This dp1.lsst.io gives you some more information on and resources for understanding what's in DP1. And then there's also this general information link, which is really useful for scientists to get more information about Rubin and the data products. Okay, so I'm assuming everyone here has data rights through an in-kind contribution team. This is just sort of an overview to remind people what the data rights and proprietary access is. So the data is proprietary for 2 years, but then the data eventually goes public after 2 years. And that includes all the documentation and support. And we also have the community forum, which is I have a slide on this later to show you sort of what that's like, but this is a really great venue for getting information and questions answered. And it's a direct link to all the people who work on the Rubin project and would know the answers to your questions. So we really encourage people to use the community forum. All right, so the Rubin Science Platform is a web-based platform that allows users to do research right next to the data. So the LSST data is very large, and so you can't download it to your computer. So this allows you to do analysis without transferring large volumes of data and having to wait for that. So there's several different ways to access the data through the Rubin Science Platform. Today, I'm just going to talk about the notebook aspect, which is how there's a command line and Python applications, and you have access to the LSST pipelines and other packages that are useful for data analysis. So I'll demonstrate a little bit about that. But there's also command line tools, and you can install your own analysis packages and things like that. So at the end, I'll sort of show a demonstration of how to use the Rubin Science Platform. Okay, so quickly, I want to just say there's a lot of documentation available. So I won't run through everything, but these links take you to places where you may find more information that's useful to you. And so there's user guides, there's documentation, there's support from the community forum and things like that. So, so this slide just sort of shows that there's a lot of ways to get help as you learn to use the data products from Rubin. All right, so I don't know how many of you already have Rubin, a Rubin Science Platform account.
I'm guessing it's all of the people on this.
Everybody, okay. All right. So if you have an account already, you can, if you want to, download the notebook that I'm gonna run through as a demonstration. You can also watch me do it. I'm gonna just bring the notebook up on my screen and explain what all of the parts are. So it's not necessary to do that, but if you want to, this slide has some instructions on how to do that. And so there should have been in your announcement a link to a GitHub page that had these slides instructions on there. But if you want to take a screenshot, if you're interested to do that, you can, but it's also not necessary. I'll just run through it on my own. So, but in the meantime, it takes a little bit to clone the repo and everything with Git. So, so if someone's interested to do that, maybe now is a good time to start working with that. Otherwise, you can just watch me do it and install this later at any time. All right. So when you start up your Rubin Science Platform, we'll be working with the recommended release of the system. So this is like the pipelines are constantly being updated. So there are versions and historical versions, and then there's like the current one that's recommended. And so we're going to choose the recommended one, and we're going to pick a large container, which will help us display large images. Okay, so now I'll move on to just an overview of some of the exciting science that LSST is going to do in terms of galaxy evolution. And so one of the key things that LSST is going to provide is a wide area survey at really unprecedented depths. So on the left here, I'm showing a picture of Sloan Digital Sky Survey, which a lot of people are familiar with as probably the last previous all-sky survey that was from the ground. And this is the limiting depth of this image is 22.5 AB mag. So for comparison, on the right, this is now not a real LSST image because I made this slide a while ago. I should have replaced it. But this is a comparably deep image from a comparably large telescope that is the depth of each single LSST exposure. So this is 24.5 magnitudes. So it's 2 magnitudes deeper in every single exposure that Rubin takes. And the final depth after the full 10-year survey is going to be 5 magnitudes deeper than Sloan. So this is really like a totally new parameter space that we really haven't seen from the ground before. So it's going to be very exciting. And it's going to open up a lot of new parameter space we haven't had. So LSST, you probably, if you're all involved in LSST Australia already, I'm sure you're involved in some of the Galaxy Science collaborations. The Galaxy Science collaboration and all of the sort of subtopics in there. So there's a number of working groups, including the low surface brightness, SED fitting, galaxy environments, a number of different things. And there are 10 key subsets of subtopics in galaxy evolution that have been highlighted as key areas where LSST will revolutionize. So this includes demographics of galaxy populations, galaxies in their dark matter context, um, extremely low surface brightness features of galaxies. There's going to be a whole new parameter space opened in terms of methodology for measuring the properties of galaxies. And so there's a lot of things you can that will happen. And so I've linked here to the Galaxy Science Collaboration site so you can find out more information if you're not yet involved. But it's easy to get involved if you have data rights. All right, so one of the key things that will happen is galaxy evolution across environments, and this is a huge dynamic range, new wide dynamic range in both redshift and volume. So on the right here, I'm showing some the sort of volume probed above a certain luminosity as a function of redshift, and you can see these other surveys that have been done before. And LSST is really going to be like the first wide and very high redshift um, survey that's been done um, before. So this is really going to be very exciting. Whoops. Um, so I guess there's a low surface, is it low surface brightness meeting that's happening right now? But low surface brightness science is really going to explode with this new data set because suddenly, and probably if you saw the first look images, it was already obvious how amazingly deep these images are and how much new structure was visible in galaxies. So on the left here, I'm showing a simulation, or not a simulation. Is it a simulation? Sorry, I just covered the screen. No, it's a real image from a very, very deep image, but it's of similar depth to what LSST will achieve compared to the same object seen by Sloan. So this is a totally different picture of galaxies where we can really see the hierarchical structure being sort of galaxies forming from the mergers of smaller galaxies and things like that. So strong lensing is also going to be a really key new parameter space for galaxy science. So LSST is going to find what we anticipate will be 300,000 new galaxy clusters, 100 times. It'll increase by a factor of 100 the known galaxy lenses, and it's supposed to find 20,000 multiply imaged lenses. And so this is much um, many more than we've seen before. And so this is going to really enable both studying the galaxies and their dark matter content, but also using those lensing structures to study the objects in the background in unprecedented detail. So this is very exciting. Okay. Also, there's going to be special populations of galaxies that will be identified from this wide imaging that is newly enabled. So we're going to look for quiescent galaxies at redshifts of 2 and below, and then star-forming galaxies out to redshift 7. And this now enables very, very bright, massive, rare galaxies to be identified. Okay, so it's also going to produce new advances in methodologies. So one key challenge for LSST is going to be deblending detection and photometry. And as we go fainter and fainter and fainter, the low surface brightness features of galaxies means that galaxies become blended together. So there are new techniques being developed to deal with this. And so this is going to, I think, sort of revolutionize also the technical aspect of these things. All right, so I will briefly talk now about the data products in DP1 that will be sort of most applicable to Galaxy Science and how to access those in the Rubin Science platform. All right, so DP1 is this first on-sky data set from the commissioning run that happened last November, and it's part of what's called Rubin's Early Science Program. And the goal is to provide early access to the community so that people can learn how to use the data products and get a feel for what the data looks like, and then the services that provide research infrastructure can be developed and sort of so that people can hit the ground running when LSST, the actual survey starts in earnest. So the data previews, the simulated data previews DP0 were part of this early science program, but now we have DP1, which is this, like I said, the LSST ComCam data. It was released last month. So we're looking forward to DP2, which will be a commissioning. It will be it will not be the beginning of LSST, the survey, but it's going to be data taken with LSST camera during the rest of this year. And we're anticipating that to be released sometime May 2026. And then that will be followed by data release 1, which will be the first data release of the LSST program. And that's probably going to happen maybe in a year and a half. So that's very exciting. So in the meantime, the alert stream, I know this is Galaxy Science, but some people may be interested in transients. And so the alert stream is going to come online at some point. The real challenge, I think, in terms of getting started early is that we need to be able to make template images to compare new images to see if something changes. And so it's going to take a while before we build up a foundation of good template imaging to make these comparisons to. All right, so data preview 1 is, you can pretty much find all the information you need about data preview 1 at this website, dp1.lsst.io. There's a paper in preparation that will overview all of the data products. It's not out yet, but there's a sort of a living draft available at this website, and you can get preliminary information on the data content and maybe get questions answered about the data quality and things like that. So this current draft includes things like the overview of the filters, the targets for DP1. There were 7 targets. I'll show you those in a minute. It shows you some of the properties of the maps that were made and the properties of the catalogs that were made and things like that. So there's a lot of great information out there that you can access through this draft. All right, so the commissioning run that is included in DP1 targeted 7 locations on the sky. So here I'm showing the map with different regions highlighted in color. So there's, near the galactic plane, and there's low dust and actually, I don't know what GP stands for, but anyway, there are these different regions of the sky where the 7 targets were located, and we sort of chose targets that would span a broad range of science topics, so that different algorithms and different applications of the LSST pipelines could be tested, and to make sure that they're working, like high density fields, for example. So this is a list of the names of the targets. So we have a globular cluster, there's a low ecliptic latitude field, there's a dwarf spheroidal galaxy, there are 2 extragalactic deep fields. So in particular, the extended Chandra Deep Field South, which many of you may know as Good South, containing the field Good South, is one of our targets, and that's the one that I'm going to be demonstrating in the notebook tutorial. And there's also a nebula, and so the idea was just to span these wide range of astrophysical environments so that people can test their analysis tools and things like that. All right, so the data products that I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to focus on 2 specific data products that are useful for galaxy evolution applications. So the first one, so this is focusing primarily on static science. And so I'm going to focus on the deep imaging that comes from stacking all of the individual exposures of LSST. So these are called deep coad images. And these images are regenerated every year using all of the exposures that were taken on the same patch of the sky over the course of the year. And I'm also going to talk about the object table. The object table is a catalog that contains the source detection that was made on these deep coad images. And so galaxies and stars and other sources are identified by signal to noise greater than 5, and then we run this deblending algorithm on them. And anything that has been identified as a source in one of the 6 filters gets forced photometry in all of the filters. So you get 6 filter SEDs for everything that's been detected at signal to noise greater than 5. So if you go look in the object table, I don't know how many of you have already explored the DP1 datasets or even the DP0.2 datasets yet, but the catalogs are quite huge. So there are the object table in particular has like more than 1,000 columns in it. And so there are many things that people probably will not necessarily need for all science applications. So I'm going to highlight a few of the key catalog columns that I think are most useful for galaxy evolution science. So this includes, there's a large number of different types of fluxes that have been measured by the LSST pipelines. And so in particular, a lot of people are interested in using total fluxes, which will tell you can use to estimate total masses and total luminosities of galaxies and things like that. So I'll show a little bit about the different options there for measuring total photometry, and then which ones are preferred for Galaxy Science. There's also a lot of fluxes in there that are not total fluxes. I'm calling them here apparent fluxes just because they're not corrected to their total flux. So that's good to be aware of. They're not always marked in the schema. Oh, sorry. This website at the top here is the schema. This is a very useful, it basically tells you the header of this full 11,000 column catalog. So I refer to the schema a lot. So these apparent fluxes are not always useful for all applications, but I'm going to talk about this Gaussian aperture and PSF flux measurement, which is kind of like a quick way of doing PSF matching so that you can get accurate colors. And so that's something that is good to be aware of in the catalog. All right, so just before I break off into the notebook demonstration, I just want to say that we have a lot of resources available. So this presentation that I'm giving today is actually part of a series of science preparation assemblies that we did in the spring. So this was the Galaxies one, which is my area of expertise. And but we have we had 8 or so of them covering a range of different other science topics. So we had AGN variability, we had transient science, we had one focused specifically on strong lensing, one on cosmology. So if there are other things you're interested in, these are recorded, and they're also the slides and the notebooks and demonstrations are all available on this website. Oh, actually, it's not this website, but I will post the website for you. We also had a Rubin Data Academy that was focused on accessing DP1, not specific to any particular science goal per se, but just an overview of DP1 and how to access the different data products and what their properties are. And so the Data Academy, we did have an Australia-friendly session, so maybe some of you were there. But those recordings and slides are all available also on this website. Okay, I just wanted to quickly point out, if you have questions, the community forum is an excellent place to post your questions, and every question is valid, and we aim to get answers within 24 hours. And you can also search to see if your question has already been asked and get a quick answer that way too. So this is a really great resource. All right, so now I'm going to start with this data access demo. All right, so this is the link that I wanted to send you to earlier. So this GitHub posts the the DP1 science preparation seminars that we hosted last spring. So if you want to go look at these other science topics and see some of the access demonstrations there. And in the meantime, I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to go over to the Rubin Science platform. So for those who haven't been to the Rubin Science platform before, it's just data.lsst.cloud. Oh, actually, let me pause for questions in case before I move on to this next section. But if there's no questions, we can also keep going and then have questions at the end. All right, so this is the landing page for the Rubin Science platform. So if you click on the notebooks, that will take you to this login. So I'm not logged in, so I have to log in with my identity provider. So if you haven't started your Rubin Science platform, there's instructions on how to navigate this. Mine's already set up, so I just have to click log on. So like I said before, I'm going to pick the recommended set of pipelines, and I'm going to pick a large container so we can plot some images. And then we have to wait for the server to start. We just got a rainstorm in Tucson, which doesn't happen very often. So hopefully you can still hear me. It's pretty loud and with the rain on the roof. Okay, good. All right. All right, I guess it saved my session from last time. So when you get to the Rubin Science platform, there's another landing page with some links to documentation and stuff. I'm just going to close this so that we have just the notebook that I was going to demonstrate. So this notebook is available on GitHub at that link that I sent you. And at the end of the session, I'll also send the link again so you can So you can do this on your own time, or even just use the code in your own for your own research if you want. So all right, so there's just some introductory blurb about what we're going to talk about, but I already sort of gave an overview of that, which is that we're going to look at the object, the deep coad images, and the object table, which is the catalog that was made out of detections from the deep coad images. So the first thing we're going to do is import a lot of packages. So there's a lot of things you may be familiar with here, like AstroPy, oh, thunder, AstroPy, Matplotlib, things like that. But there's also a range of LSST pipelines that are included, and you can import those. They're already installed in each user's environment. So I'm gonna focus. You may have seen, if you've used this before, you may have seen Firefly as the default sort of image display interface, but I'm going to use Matplotlib because it's easier to make plots that I want to show. All right, so we're also going to instantiate the butler. So if you haven't used the butler before, the butler is LSST's sort of data delivery server, I guess you could call it. And so if you tell it what database to search in, then it will retrieve images for you. So this is, here we have to tell the butler that we want to access DP1 data, and the DP1 data, every time they reprocess the data, it becomes a different collection. So we're going to use the default collection, which is sort of the public facing one, which is LSST comcam/DP1. All right, so we do that, and then we're also going to initialize the TAP service. So TAP stands for Table Access Protocol. It's a virtual observatory standard. So Rubin tries to use virtual observatory standards wherever possible. So the TAP service is one of them, and that's how we are going to query the object table. So we're going to start that too. Okay, so then there is functionality to make image cutouts. So all of the LSST images are really big. And so it's not always convenient to transfer over these huge images and make a cutout yourself. So there is a service that allows you to tell the remote server, I need a cutout, and this is the specification of the cutout, and I'm just going to transfer it over. And so I'm going to gloss over all of those details, but that is packaged up in this little function that we have a tutorial notebook that explains how that works if you want to use it or learn more about it. All right, so the first set of data products are the deep coad images. And so we're gonna, in this section 2, we're gonna retrieve an image and look at it, and we're gonna sort of do some basic image manipulation with it. So for this tutorial, I'm using the ECDFS. So this is the Extended Chandra Deep Field South. This happens to be the deepest imaging that was taken in DP1. And it's the deepest across all 6 filters. Not all of the DP1 fields got 6 filters, but this one did. So it's a really great sort of test case for a wide variety of things. So the first thing we're going to do is define the center of the field. So this is all things you can find in the DP1 publication that I showed you in the slides. And so we're going to define this region, a region of 0.1 degrees around the center to search for images. And so to search for images, we're going to ask the butler to query this data set for deep coads that then we put these query commands in here that say, make sure these images that you're sending back to us overlap this region. And then we're going to store the first retrieved image as coad. So there is like a grid of deep coad images. And so a search like this may retrieve multiple images because there are images that may overlap each other by a little bit at the border, but also depending on how big your search radius is, you'll get a lot of images back. So we're just going to keep the first one as an example. Okay, so I ran that. This thing seems to have already stored my output from the last time I ran this when I tested it, so sorry about that. This cell will then plot the image that you already see there. This is the full deep coad image that is the first one that was retrieved from that Butler query. So this is a single region, a single patch and tracked image. So I didn't mention what patch and tracked are, but the deep coad images are split up into this grid across the whole sky. And so a single patch and tract is how you uniquely define one single part of the sky. And so this is a patch and tract that overlaps the ECDFS. Okay, so you can these images that are retrieved by the butler, it's not just a FITS file, it's a FITS file with many layers that have a lot of metadata that is also very useful for doing various science things. So there's like a mask, and there's the RMS map, and there's a map of the PSF throughout the whole deep coat image. And there's also WCS. So here you can use this WCS function to retrieve the WCS from this patch and tract. And here you can see the output. I printed it out here. All right, so this image is very large, so we're gonna use that little function that I defined up at the top to cut out a small piece that is around the Hubble Ultra Deep Field area. So if you work with Hubble Space Telescope data, you are, I'm sure, very familiar with the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. And so this was also mapped in DP1 as part of the ECDFS. And so I put those coordinates in there, and we're going to generate a little cutout. So this cutout function retrieves the cutout as basically as bytes. So then you have to tell the Rubin Science Platform what you want to do with those bytes. And here we're going to retrieve them as an exposure F type object. And the exposure F is sort of the native Rubin Science Platform LSST pipelines image format, which has all of these layers with the metadata included. So you can treat this as the science extension is just a 2D array of pixel values, and so that's what this function you can access that by doing this image.array from this big exposure F type object. And so, for example, you can say how many, what is the pixel shape of this cutout that I made, and it's 1800 by 1800 pixels. So then we already plotted it, but here I'll just plot it again. So this here you can just use this AFW display as the LSST pipeline display package. And so there's a lot of tools that can easily work with these exposure F type objects. So this is the cutout around the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, and you may recognize it or not. But anyway, that's we've made a nice little cutout of the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. Okay, so now I will talk about the object table. So the object table, like I said, is the catalog of static objects that are detected at signal to noise greater than 5 from the deep coat images. And these are automatically run using the LSST science pipelines and are available, once per year they update this object table. And so the first thing that I'm going to do here is demonstrate how to retrieve the sources that are inside that cutout. So from this cutout image that we made before, there are some functions you can use to access sort of the bounding box of that image that you just cut out. So to cut out that image, we defined the image center and the image sort of edge boundary size. And so, but we didn't necessarily know what the location of those edges are. So here, these functions help you to access the sort of the bounding box of this image. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to query the object table for objects that sit inside this bounding box of this cutout. So if you've used virtual observatories in the table access protocol before, then you'll recognize this language, but you basically build these queries like this, where you say, please select these column names from the object table, which has this name. And then you can say where these objects are contained in this geographic point with the polygon defining the bounding box that has all of these 4 corners. So we define the query, and then we're going to run it. Service is what we defined as the tap service earlier. So we told the RSP that we want this to be a tap service query, and then we can print the results of the query. So there are 4,724 objects that sit inside that cutout. So we can convert this to an astropy table, which you can then also plot if you want to see all the different columns. But here I'm just gonna instead just plot them on top of the image cutout so that you can see where all of the sources that the sources line up with all of the entries in the catalog. Um, so that demonstrates sort of how to access images and also the sources that sit inside those images. So maybe I'll pause here for questions before I start talking about the photometry. Okay, I'll just keep going. All right, so I mentioned earlier that there are 1,000 columns in the object table, and there are a number of photometric measurements, and so it's useful to have some, guide in which types of photometry are useful for what science application. So again, there's this link takes you to the schema for the DP1 where you can read a little bit. It's a very brief header explanation of what these columns are. But here we can print them. So I'm going to query here for the column name in the DP1 catalog, and I'm going to query the schema um, of the DP1 object table. So you can do that and see, without going to the schema website, you can then in your code print out the different options available. So I'm going to do that here. So I queried pretty much all of the column names. And here in this cell, I'm just going to filter out only the ones that say flux and don't say error, just so we get one entry for each flux measurement. And so you can see here, these are all the different measurements of flux that exist in the object table. So there's a lot in there. So I'm going to talk about a few key ones that I think are the useful ones to do for sort of basic science applications that Galaxy people might be interested in. Okay, so I mentioned there are total flux measurements in there, which try to measure the total amount of light coming out of the galaxy itself. So there's two different ways that there's two key ones I think that are usable in DP1. One of them is Sirsic fluxes. So for each light profile for each galaxy, the LSST pipelines will measure a Sirsic model or fit a Sirsic model to the light profile, and then use that Sirsic model to integrate the total light coming out of that object. So you can find those in Sirsic flux, and there's some other parameters that are associated with that, including the Sirsic index, and there's some shape parameters that you can use to reconstruct the Sirsic profile. There's also composite models, which if you're a user of Sloan Digital Sky Survey, you'll remember this as sort of the linear combination of the best fitting exponential and bulge profiles. So this is, n Sirsic index n equals 1 or Sirsic index n equals 4. So this C model flux is also very well tested, and both of these, there's some scatter between these two measurements, but for the most part, they're both sort of, pretty good measurements of the total flux. There's also, I'll note actually, there's also this free, C model free, which allows more degrees of freedom in the modeling. And I think for now, people are recommending to use just the one that's where it's not labeled free. All right, so then there are these apparent fluxes, which is good to keep in mind are not total fluxes for the galaxy. The first one is Cron, and that's kind of confusing because I think both Cron and aperture fluxes in other contexts sometimes have been PSF corrected to account for light that falls outside of the aperture. These are basically aperture photometry. So the Cron they measure in the LSST pipelines a shape parameter, and then that shape parameter, it's basically an ellipse, and it's used as an aperture to add up all the flux within the ellipse. And then there's also circular apertures. These do not get PSF corrected. They do not get corrected for the flux lost outside the aperture. So these have some applications, but they will miss flux especially for very large objects. All right, so those are good things to keep in mind. So now I'm just going to show a quick demonstration of the photometry. So this is a query to search for galaxies and collect their photometry from the ECDFS. So this is similar to the last query we did where we're going to query from the object table here. But now I'm going to just collect a whole bunch of different photometry and shape measurements from the object table. And I'm also going to restrict the return to be only things that are signal to noise greater than 20, so we have good measurements. And then also things where various flags indicate that the modeling of the light profiles did not fail. So that's this cron flux flag and this C model flag. If they're set to 0, it means there were no problems with this modeling. Another thing that is useful is to set this extendedness parameter, which removes point sources like stars. And then I'm going to search do this search radius, a spatial search for the objects around the ECDFS. And this is really important actually because the object table is parsed by RA and DEC. And so it's sort of important to um, have this in your query, otherwise it might take a really long time. All right, so we'll run that, and then we're going to run the query. And then, oh, that didn't work. Let me see what happened here. Okay, it disconnected me. Let me try again. There we go. Okay, not sure what happened there. Anyway, here you can see the return of this query. So the column, the object table header is up here, and these are all of the shape, like the Sursic index and the Sursic flux and the other shape parameters that I retrieved from the object table. Okay, so now we're just going to go in my last few minutes here. We're just going to go through some quick visualization of the shapes and photometry that are in the object catalog. So first, I'm just going to generate some magnitudes because I think in magnitude. So I'm converting these fluxes, which units are units of nanojansky. I'm converting them into AB magnitudes here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is visualize these photometric apertures. So I've picked an object ID of a galaxy that's elongated, so we can sort of see the differences between these different apertures and how they may impact the photometry measurement. So I'm going to down select this catalog by the single object with this elongated structure. And then I'm going to retrieve some of these shape parameters that were in the object table and convert them into something that we are more familiar with. So this is in the object table is this set of shape parameters that are moments measured from the shape of from the imaging directly, and it's I think this is like a weak lensing cosmology algorithm that's used HSM moments. And so in any case, that's not really my field, so I don't know all the details of that algorithm, but you can use these built-in ellipses package from the LSST pipelines to convert these shape parameters into things that we're more familiar with, including the semi-major axis, the semi-minor axis, and the rotation angle theta, so that we can then plot an elliptical aperture on top of the galaxy. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to make this image cutout again, but very, very small, focused on this one galaxy. So I've made the cutout size for this is the function again that we've defined in the beginning. I'm putting it on the center of this elongated galaxy, and then I'm asking for a very small cutout so we can see a picture of this individual object. Okay, so then I store this image as cutout, and then I'm going to produce the cutout. So this cell here just plots the cutout. And then on top of it, I'm making some apertures. So there is circular aperture photometry that I showed in the query. So I've just, as an example, plotted two rather large circular apertures on top here in red and green. And then the shape parameters, I converted those into elliptical shape parameters that like semi-major and semi-minor axis and the rotation angle. And then this is sort of an approximation of the Cron aperture if you multiply by a factor of 2.5. And so there's for those who are familiar with Cron photometry, usually you multiply by several factors of the radius to make sure that you encapsulate the majority of the flux when you do the aperture photometry. So that's what this blue this blue is showing. So this sort of demonstrates how you can use the shape parameters and also how to visualize the apertures that are used to make the photometry. So you can also, so there are all these Sersic parameters in the object table also. So you can reconstruct the model from the Sersic model that is used to calculate total fluxes from Sersic flux. And so I'll just quickly demonstrate that here. So in this case, the object table has these parameters called Sersic RF, which is effective radius. They are by default in the X and Y direction in the imaging, which is always, it's not quite, it's not the semi-major or semi-minor axis. So we need to convert that using this ellipse major and ellipse functions here. And there's also a parameter called Sersic rho, which contains um, the rotation angle that will be needed. So I'm going to store the output here and then in X, and then you can access the axis ratio and the position angle and then the semi-major axis using these little function things. Okay, so we're going to do that, and that will enable us to plot a Sersic model. So to plot the Sersic model, I'm going to use this GalSim package. So if you are familiar with DP 0.2, the Galaxy simulation, GalSim was one of the packages that was used to generate the simulation. So it's a code that produces little mock galaxies with mock light profiles. So we're going to use that. That's what we imported GalSim as GS up above. So GalSim has a Sersic function. So you can include Sersic index from the object catalog. You can include the half-light radius, and then also the rotation angle in order to get it to draw this Sersic model. So this model looks very similar to the model of the actual galaxy. It's a little bit scaled, not quite right, but in any case, if you compared them side by side and adjusted the scaling, this is how you would see what the best fit model that the LSST pipelines produced. And you can see here, if you add up the total flux from this model, it actually equals the flux in the object table from the Sersic model flux. So that's kind of a demonstration of where that comes from. Okay, so I have 3 minutes, so I'm just going to skip this part. This is just to show that the aperture photometry does not do a good job of approximating all of these are different circular aperture photometry. And so as you get to very large objects, you start losing flux. And so that's not a good measurement of the flux. Down here at the bottom, I just want to point out there is also a field that targeted a galaxy cluster. The Abel 360 cluster sits inside one of the DP1 footprints. And so we're going to do a second query around that part of the sky. So that's these coordinates here. And I'm going to do a second query to retrieve colors and photometry for galaxies in that cluster. So I'm just going to run this job to search for these cluster objects and put it in a table. And then I mentioned earlier that to measure colors, the best thing to do is to use these GAAP fluxes, which is sort of like an efficient way to do PSF matching in order to get accurate colors. So we pre-compute these for you. There's a number of different sort of aperture sizes and one called optimal. It turns out that the optimal one is not very good, so we shouldn't use that. And I think our preliminary tests have shown that the aperture 1.0 aperture is actually a pretty good estimate of the color. So that's the one that I'm using here. So I'm retrieving the GAAP fluxes from the ECDFS that we queried before, and I'm also going to add in these cluster ones. And then you can make a color magnitude diagram to compare the cluster to the field galaxies. And of course, these are real, cluster galaxies in the Abel 360 cluster up here. And you can see the red sequence is popping out very nicely in this color magnitude diagram compared to the field galaxies where there's no prominent red sequence. Okay, so I made it through with 10 seconds to spare. Um, so that's the end of the presentation, but I'm happy to take questions and I can stay a little longer if there are questions that I was supposed to finish 10 minutes ago. So
Any questions from the other users online?
May I ask a question? I'm Xuan Yi. I'm a student. Just got the LSST and data access through the Cesaro. Yeah, I was wondering, you measure the aperture measurement. So I was wondering, a related question is, um, how this aperture flux measured, or the total flux, is that based on the PSF localized? Is the PSF changing within the field of view?
oh,
Yeah, considering the LST has a huge field of view.
yes. Yeah, it's a good question. So actually one thing I didn't show, this exposure F uh package, it's not a package, sorry. It's like a sort of loaded image that is returned by the LSST pipeline. So it includes information about the PSF shape that and how it varies within the field of view.
Okay.
And so when they do these measurements, they're using the one appropriate to where the galaxy is located in the image. And so we do have some tutorials that talk more about the PSF specifically, and also um, so I can maybe refer you to those because it's also not something I'm the most familiar with, but we do have some tutorials that sort of demonstrate how to access the PSF at different locations of the map. So if you wanted
Yeah,
to find it,
yeah,
I assume that's what you're trying to figure out, like,
yeah.
yeah.
Because
So those things are easily accessible
oh,
using this exposure F type image along with the LSST pipelines. There's easy ways to access that. So let me point you to the tutorials that show you how to do that.
okay. Thank you very much.
Um, and maybe I'll do that after. Let's see if there's other. Actually, I can show you right here. So when you're in the Rubin Science, do you already have your Rubin Science platform account?
Yeah, not yet. I just registered, and it shows that they will process for a while, then
Okay.
give me a email back. Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you get it, we have these tutorials here. Just in the menu, you can just quickly access them. So in DP 0.2, I know we had some PSF data products,
Oh yeah,
12A notebook. So you can it'll just open
yeah.
and it tells you something about, what this tutorial shows you. But there's another one also, this PSF science demo. And then I think we probably have some. So DP1, we have a different set of tutorials that do these demonstrations on that. Oh yeah, so we have a couple of point spread function tutorials with DP1 also. So that's probably a better place to go because this will use real imaging that you are probably more likely to use in science.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry about that. My cat. Sorry.
No problem. I like cats.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Christina. I mean, we had a workshop in Melbourne, just before the first look event, and Leanne Guy was demonstrating various aspects of all of this stuff, but that was all had to be based on DP 0.2, which of course is pretty well understood, but isn't, as you say, is not real. So to get an understanding and appreciation of what real data in DP1 looks like, again in a notebook format that's relatively straightforward to follow, has been really, really fantastic.
Yeah, let me just send you guys the link to this notebook in case you want to go through it yourself, because it pieces together a number of things that actually I'll just send you to the main page here. I'll put this in the chat in case you want to copy this. So if you go in here, this is the repository for all of the tutorials that we did last spring that were sort of science prep, and that's broadly what this one was based on. But if you go to the Galaxies folder and go to the DP1 folder, you'll find the specific notebook that I showed today.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's so much better to be able, when you're working with real products, but to be guided by someone who's already been through and had the chance to figure out some of the idiosyncrasies in the data. But
Yeah, I mean, I would say also a lot of the access methods are not that straightforward. I mean, there's like these, setting up the queries correctly, like having working examples is actually really useful. At least it was for me to
exactly,
learn how
yeah,
to do
yeah,
these things.
yeah. But, so
So
that's
I also will say, like, when you start working with the data, it's not always straightforward how to work with it, and I find that in a lot of cases it's actually, you're trying something for the first time, and so we actually welcome the feedback from the community, like if you find something that isn't working or isn't that straightforward, it's useful to hear. I already found one bug in DP1 while I was trying to write a Galaxy shapes tutorial that isn't public yet because I keep running into these various roadblocks. So I didn't show any of the ones with bugs in them, but anyway, we're still working out this early science is as much a exercise for us as everybody else. So
yeah. It's new but it's really, really exciting, and
yeah.
so people can't wait to get their hands stuck into it. So yeah, so thank
Hi,
you. Go
hi,
ahead.
Kristen. I'm sorry, Stuart. I have a very naive question, Christina. Can I ask? Do you have time?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So the tutorial which you showed, I'm just trying to follow up. I was trying to follow up alongside you. So this tutorial is based only for ECDFS, or can I use some other coordinates and just run them?
Oh, yeah. So you will want to pick coordinates that exist in like that overlay actual data, otherwise you'll get an error. But if you go, so back here, I think I had a slide that showed, so if you enter the coordinates, as long as you enter coordinates that overlay these maps, you can just swap them out and use one of the other fields.
So it's not specific to ECDFS.
This no. Although if you try, like, so for example, some of these fields don't have they don't have all of the filters. This
Okay.
particular field, this particular tutorial though that I showed was,
Yeah.
I think it was retrieving information from filters that do exist in all the fields. So I think it should be fine. But sometimes you'll get a
Okay.
non-informative error if you query for a parameter that doesn't exist.
Okay, because I tried, like earlier, I tried to find some of my sources if it is there in DP1, and I found few, but I don't know if it is in ECDFS or any other region. I tried to query one of the array deck, one of the position. I didn't get the same object ID as what I received earlier through portal, so that's why I was confused whether it is very specific to ECDFS or any other region in the 7 fields.
I think each object in the sky should have a unique object ID. You're saying that you retrieved an image, the same object from the portal in the notebook and it came back different, or?
Uh, Sorry. No, through portal I accessed and I got a table uh, like of sources which are there in mine. And in that, the object ID is different from the one I'm getting here. So I was confused. Maybe I'll try. I'll also go through it again and verify it.
I think the object ID should be unique, but it doesn't mean that there isn't some weird thing happening. So,
Okay.
so if you aren't able to solve it, I would definitely post on the community forum because people are posting
Yeah.
all kinds of unexpected behavior in certain circumstances. So it may not be something you're doing wrong. It might just be,
Yeah, I'll have another go at it and then I'll post something.
Okay, sounds
Yeah,
good.
thank you.
Sure.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions, thanks again, Christina, for taking going a bit outside your normal working time to
Yeah, it's
enable
fine.
us to have a
Thanks for
session.
coming. Yeah.
Sorry, it's sort of aligned with so many other things, but thanks for the recording. We will be able to share this much more broadly with our users, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to go through these exercises with known and tested DP1 data before they launch into it themselves. So that's going to be really, really valuable.
Yeah, it does look like my other computer where I was recording crashed, so I'm not sure how much of that recording.
Oh, okay. Well,
But in any case, we have this recorded. We have the DP0 version recorded, but I think the sharing the notebook is probably
yeah.
yeah.
And there's probably the Data Academy recordings.
Yeah, the Data Academy recordings are there. Yeah, they're not science specific, but these are a lot of the things I showed today were picked out of various tutorial notebooks and previous presentations. So
Yeah, and we've now got 2 or 3 people who were here live and got to see it, so I'm sure they can be the guide, provide guidance for anyone else who wants to have a go. So
okay,
thanks
yeah.
again for that.
All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you sometime soon.
Yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.